What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, we got a great episode for you today. We're breaking down what we think are the best fights on UFC 323, and this is the last card on ESPN, the last pay-per-view card, I should say, of all time, because every numbered card after this is going to be on Paramount Plus. So, Nick, that's at least something to celebrate, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's get right into the main event.
Yeah.
What can be different about this fight that would give Petr Yan a better chance at winning?
Yeah, well, Petr Yan is one of the most technical fighters in the bantamweight division, maybe in the entire UFC. He's so good everywhere. And the way we saw Merab handle him in their last fight just shows you the level and how real that pressure that Merab brings it. I mean, even a guy like Petr Yan, who has dealt with all styles and seems to be a difficult night for everybody at bantamweight, he seemed like he had no answers against Merab's pressure. And that's what really starts to open up Merab's striking. And that's why people are starting to see him as not only a lethal grappler, but a lethal striker as well. It's because he's durable as heck. He comes inside and he knows if the exchange isn't going his way, he's within arm's reach of grabbing the person. Now, 49 takedown attempts was what was registered or recorded in their last fight. Takedown attempts, and I think he got 11. But if you go back and look at it, it almost feels like they were counting any sort of ground time for Petr Yan as a takedown for Merab.
Yeah.
You know, some of them look more like mat returns rather than full-blown takedowns, and he certainly didn't solidify top position every time he took Petr Yan down. So, yes, you can say Merab got him down 11 times, or you could say Petr Yan defended 38 takedowns against Merab. So both ways you can find it pretty impressive.
You could actually make a strong case for both men based on those stats, because if you're talking about, let's just 49, let's call it 50 takedown attempts, and let's say 11 were landed, let's call it 10, that is actually an 80% takedown defense.
Against the takedown machine.
Against the takedown machine. But the problem is that because of the sheer amount of output that Merab can put forward, even if you're defending 80% of the takedowns, he's still going to get you down 11 times, which is so insane.
Right. So that's 2 times per round. If he's only getting 10 takedowns in a 25-minute fight, it's insane. But I really do think that Petr Yan has to fight his fight. And what I mean by that is Merab's pressure is always going to be there within a fight. He doesn't take a step back. But what you can do is try to match him and don't let him control the fight. Don't let him push you back. Now, it's difficult because once you start to strike, that's when he knows to shoot in. And if you are too shy, he's going to put you by the cage. And now you're dealing with his pressure plus the cage. Just a difficult situation all in all. It didn't work well for Petr Yan last time. So while Merab doesn't have to change a whole lot, I think Petr Yan has to change how he tactically approaches this fight if he wants to score more offense and ultimately have more exchanges go his way. Because Merab, he got hit in that fight, but he eats shots really well. Of course, he gets square at times, and I think that Petr Yan needs to try to do his best to do damage up the middle, hopefully try to wear on the seemingly never-ending gas tank of Merab. I think the only way you can do that is not by grappling pressure and not by trying to put iron on iron, but to try to zap him with power shots to the body. That's probably the only way you can actually slow Merab down. And the other aspect that you have to watch out for if you're Petr Yan is Merab's ability to keep you from settling into a bad position on the ground, but what he does is he gives you just enough space to think there's a little bit of hope for you to get up, so you keep fighting like hell, and that's what actually zaps you, right? If Merab were the type of guy that once he takes you down or once he gets your back, he puts his hooks in or does a body triangle of some sort and then controls you, the person that's losing the round could almost be like, all right, at least I can breathe here. Like, I'm going to intelligently defend the strikes and the chokes. That's not how Merab does it at all. He's like, no, I don't need to put my hooks in. I don't want to put my hooks in. I want to stay behind you, make you think you can get up just in time to put you back down, and then I'll trip you the other way, and then I'm going to put you on your head. He does all of that sort of stuff, which is just absolutely demoralizing and will break anybody's will and all of the confidence that they may have had coming into this fight.
He almost allows you to cook yourself.
Right. And you can't really combat what he's doing, because if he's giving you a little bit of space, your coaches are going to be like, hey, get the underhook or figure out the way you can get back to your feet, build your base and get back to your feet. But It's almost like Merab knows what that's going to happen. That's his version of MMA chess, right? He's like, I don't need to go solidify the best position possible. I just need to go get to a dominant position and wear on this person. And I think that's how he has so much success. He's also as confident as he's ever been. So I think that's a blessing and a curse, because he is a little bit more open to getting hit on the feet. But at the same time, he's a very durable guy, and he knows how to get the fight down in an instant. And that's why I think Petr Yan is fighting an uphill battle going in there for the rematch.
Yeah, those are all really solid points, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I think Petr Yan does have his work cut out for him.
Yeah.
Here's where I could see Petr Yan having some success. Merab is kind of entering his realm as somewhat of a finisher.
Yeah.
You know, what was the main critique of Merab as he's gone on a almost unblemished, perfect 13-fight win streak is that he's not an exciting finisher.
Yeah.
Well, he's actually got some finishes under his belt now, and some pretty decent ones.
Oh, yeah.
And he's also starting to feel a little bit more at home with his hands.
Yeah.
So is he going to make that fatal mistake of, you know, not dancing with the one that brung him, so to speak, and falling more in love with finishes and knockouts and, you know, landing significant damage on his opponent, which could be dangerous if you're in there with a Petr Yan, because Petr Yan is a lethal striker. He's one of the best, most devastating strikers in the bantamweight division.
Right.
He doesn't throw anything to score points. Petr Yan throws to do damage.
Yep.
He's got a very heavy Muay Thai style of fighting. I also think that does kind of lend him to being taken down, because Muay Thai fighters fight a little bit more upright.
Yep.
They don't bounce around a lot. He's not like the Sean O'Malley type fighter that's going to be a little bit more elusive. He's going to be right in front of you, and he's going to throw. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, his style of striking, if Merab engages in it, you know, does have the risk for Merab of getting knocked out, and it can do damage. But at the same time, it's also an easier style for Merab to take down, because he's right there standing in front of you, not running and engaging. So I'm interested to see how Petr Yan balances his Muay Thai style of striking with also being somewhat elusive, which you have to be against Merab if you don't want to end up on the ground where he's got a huge advantage. But all in all, my prediction is Merab Dvalishvili does win this fight.
Okay.
I think that he's got too much for Petr Yan. Right, there's something to be said about momentum. And even though Petr Yan is on a 3-fight win streak, it was right before that 3-fight win streak that he was on a 3-fight losing streak. So if you look at his last 6 fights, he's 3-3.
Right.
Now, I know that spans from 2021 all the way to now. So that's, I guess, in some ways an unfair assessment to make. But when you look at the guy who's just smoking everybody and lapping the division and doing it with ease, in his post-fight interviews, he's talking like he just finished a light workout, not that he finished a 5-round title fight. I think that Merab Dvalishvili is cementing himself as the greatest bantamweight fighter we have ever seen. And I think he's having a good time doing it. And I think he wants to put a stamp on it that demonstrates, like, hey, Dominic Cruz, great fighter. TJ Dillashaw, great fighter. Aljamain Sterling, great fighter, training partner, teammate, friend. But I am the best bantamweight the world has ever seen.
Yes.
He's fighting like it in his last couple of fights. I think the momentum is high. I think Merab Dvalishvili wins again. I think he does it by decision. Petr Yan's, I mean, I wish I could say something, you know, more exciting than that. Petr Yan's a very hard guy to finish. He's as durable as they come, tough as nails. Merab's going to get the control time. He's going to win 4 rounds to 1.
Well, it's a safe call. The heavy favorite wins via decision, the way he does it best. And just to put a bow on the bantamweight GOAT talk, Merab is the GOAT, in my opinion. Everybody else, there's a couple of hardcores out there that are like, Dominic Cruz still is the guy. And I get it. I'm a fan of Dominic Cruz. He's great at what he does, and he was a great champion. But Merab is fighting at the highest level that MMA has ever seen. And he's lapping a division that up until he was the champ and started lapping it, everybody was like, oh, bantamweight is like the hottest division right now. And it's kind of slowed down, but only because he's put such a margin between himself and the rest of the pack. So the only thing I'm worried about for Merab, before I give you my prediction, is he is becoming a fan favorite. And a couple of things come with that. We saw the same thing with Alex Pereira. You start to not modify your style too much, but he is getting more comfortable on the feet. He's down to strike a little bit longer with people than he used to. Before, it was right to the game plan, take the guy down, beat him up, do what you have to do to win. Now he's fighting 4 times a year, and these are not 3-round fights. These are 25-minute fights that he's getting ready for. This is going to be his 4th title defense this year, and I worry that he might not be fully recovered, or he might not be fully ready, and more just trying to appease the fans. And that's what worries me a little bit about this fight, but it doesn't worry me enough to go with Petr Yan. I do have to go with Merab. We saw them fight, and Merab is only getting better and better. And while Petr Yan has figured himself out and now he's got a new, fresh coat of paint that he can go into the division with, I still think it's too hard for him to win this fight. I got Merab winning. I don't want to go just the same pick as you, but I don't see how he's going to find a submission. Merab doesn't look for submissions, and I certainly don't see him finding a knockout on Petr Yan. So I think we're going to see a decision. I'll go 3 rounds to 2 just to not be dead on with you.
Yeah, I think the finish, if it is to come, is a ground and pound finish, because I don't think he's going to submit Yan, and I certainly don't think he's going to knock him out on the feet.
No.
But he may do enough damage on the ground to get the fight stopped at some point if he advances position. So I'm still going to stick with, I think the fight's going to go to decision, but if it were to be a finish, my bet would be that it was finished by ground and pound, sort of TKO situation.
Well, main event, I mean, it's a great one. It's a great fight for them to end the ESPN deal with, because Merab, he's done everything great as a champion, and it almost feels like sort of the end of a chapter. But give it to a guy that deserves it. Like, it'll go down kind of as history. Like, this is the last card of the year, also the last card of this deal.
ESPN
and I just think it's a good way to end the year.
I do too. And I mean, for sure, we're going to have some fireworks in the co-main event.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be great. So let's get into that now. Joshua Van.
H-Town Zone.
H-Town Zone. You have been on the training mat with him, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, he comes over to Main Street from time to time, works on his boxing, and he's high-level fighter. And, once you start to get into title fights and you start to get into champ camps, you do have to start to pull from further areas rather than just your single gym. 4 Ounce Fight Club is where he trains every day. He's got a great stable of fighters. Michael Aswell, Daniel Pineda's kind of the head man over there leading the charge. A lot of great fighters on the mats, but he does seek some different looks from different people. And I've seen some great work from Josh Van. It's funny because he's only been in MMA, not in the UFC, but in MMA like 5 years. And he's one of the youngest guys on the roster, now going to be one of the youngest guys potentially to get a title in UFC history. And it just doesn't even seem like it's phasing him at all, right? He really does feel like one of those guys that has ice running through his veins, and it didn't take him a long time to get that. It's just kind of, some people just got it, right?
It's unusual for somebody that age. I think he's, 23 years old, something like that?
Super young.
And, for him to be not phased at all by the spotlight. Now, fight night's different, right?
He might just have a good poker face, right?
Exactly. Like with Jack Della Maddalena, unfortunately, we all kind of knew what was going to happen at the walkout with Jack, which is, you could just, the body language says a lot.
Yep.
Now, I don't think Josh Van is gonna have that same body language that Jack had, but fight night, when you're fighting somebody who a lot of people are considering to be getting kind of close to Demetrius Johnson's,
which is insane,
realm
right?
of greatest flyweight of all time. So it's going to be really interesting to see the 23-year-old in the cage against the guy who's one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, and my thing is Josh Van has probably the best style to beat Pantoja. And it's because he's really heavy-handed, especially for that division. And Pantoja is great everywhere. He can kickbox really well. Of course, his grappling is good. His submissions, a high level. He's very, very good everywhere. But at times, he turns a bit square to his opponents. He kind of walks in almost like a zombie and eats some shots. And at 125, you can get away with that against a lot of people. And we've seen Pantoja get away with it against a lot of people. But Josh Van seems to have a little bit more pop in his shots than the rest of the guys at 125. And I'm worried that Pantoja might walk into something, maybe not underestimating Van, but just assuming that he can get inside and control the fight a little bit better than he can. I think Josh Van is going to make this fight super exciting. I think the fans are going to be going crazy for this because I see it going one of two ways. Pantoja winds up dealing with the adversity early on that Josh Van brings, zaps the gas tank, and then takes it to the later rounds and looks for a submission. Or Josh Van starts to do serious damage early on, and Pantoja can't quite recover from it, and we see another super young superstar of it essentially get made in one night. So this fight for me is super interesting because Pantoja obviously is the more skilled, more experienced guy, and he's the champion coming in. So you would assume that he would have the advantage everywhere. But Josh Van, he has the great equalizer, which is the power in his hands, and he does a whole lot of damage, and it doesn't take a ton of shots for him to get his damage done. So I think Pantoja may be in for the toughest title fight that he's had as champ.
Yeah, just curious, have you ever actually had a chance to do a round with Josh? Or?
No, I haven't. I haven't done any rounds with him. Last time he was at Main Street, he was specifically working with Coach Bobby, doing boxing only.
Oh, boxing specific stuff. Yeah, that makes.
So they had some pros in there, and they were giving him some good looks. So
that's good, and that's So here's the thing: do you know how many significant strikes Josh Van averages per minute? Because I looked it up.
Not off my head, no.
Okay, it's 9.
Really?
So he averages 9. So when you think about like Max Holloway, these other people that are, output machines,
volume
monsters.
Yeah.
They're doing like 5 to 6 significant strikes landed per minute.
Damn.
Josh Van, to this day, I think it's 8.86 significant strikes landed per minute. So let's call it 9. So Joshua Van in a fight is going to hit you with 9 things of significance per minute. So if you take that over, let's just easy numbers because my math is not as good as it once was. Let's call it 10 over 25 minutes. That's 250 significant strikes that he's going to hit you with.
Talk about volume.
He's an absolute volume machine. And so I think it's going to be really interesting for Pantoja. Now, Pantoja's pretty durable. He's got excellent grappling, but here's the other thing. Josh Van has an 80% takedown defense.
Yeah, he hasn't had to show a whole lot of grappling since he's been in the UFC. Yeah. But what we have seen out of his grappling is really high-level takedown defense.
Yeah, and that 80% is against a level that's not Pantoja. That's I don't think anybody would argue that. Right. So does he defend 80% of Pantoja's takedowns? Probably not.
Right.
We talked about momentum, experience, coming into being one of the greats. To me, that's what this is for Pantoja. He's kind of trying to cement himself as one of the, if not the all-time great flyweight champion of the world. Joshua Van, I believe, is as clear-cut of a future champion as there ever will be 100%. In the UFC. But I don't think he does it this time.
No.
I think that Pantoja is going to win this fight. I think that he's too much of a veteran. He's too crafty with his entries and his ability to get takedowns. He knows how to adjust on the fly. Josh Van's numbers are phenomenal. 9 significant strikes per minute, 80% takedown defense. But again, the level is not the same when you get in there with Alexandre Pantoja.
Right.
He has a different style, pace, demeanor, skill set that he brings that Josh Van has never faced. This is by far the biggest fight that Josh Van has ever been in, bar none. This is not the biggest fight that Pantoja has been in.
That's right.
I think my prediction is that Pantoja finds a submission in the 3rd or 4th round. Joshua Van, no sweat off his back. I'm going to be cheering for him. I always, and I like to make that very clear on this channel, I always cheer for the Houston fighter, especially somebody that I've never been in the gym with him and met him personally. I will be cheering for him, but unfortunately, I think that Pantoja gets it done by submission in the 3rd or 4th round.
I hear you.
Rear naked choke, by the way. Takes his back, gets a choke in.
So the champs are coming in with the belts and they're leaving with the belts, in your opinion, which is totally fine.
Yes.
But yeah, it's H-Town's guy. He's our newest, youngest, star. And I got to go with Josh Van. And the reason I'm going to go with him is because when you go and look at some of the training footage that he's been putting out and some of the work that they did in the countdown and in the embeddeds and all the stuff that's been leading up to this fight, it looks like his boxing has gotten even better. And look for him to be baiting Pantoja with some jabs to force Pantoja to throw what sometimes looks like lazy jabs to me. Pantoja at times does get a little bit lazy. And what really shows that is he'll throw a jab or he'll throw a 2 and sort of overextend, put the weight too far into the lead leg. I've been watching a lot of footage of Josh Van where he'll basically throw the jabs just to find the timing when you try to counter, and then he does like a pull counter or a step off to the side, counters with a 2. I just think that he can dial in that kind of shot, and he's got the speed to really make it land and do some damage on Pantoja. It's hard to beat Pantoja, but I think if anybody can do it, it's going to be H-Town's own Josh Van. I've got him winning this fight via 3rd round TKO. I think he's going to catch him a couple times. The crowd's going to go crazy. We may see a little bit of grappling exchanges, but if he survives those, I think he does rinse and repeat, get back to his feet every round, at least whether it's from his own doing or from the ref ending the round. But I think Josh Van becomes the flyweight champion of the UFC, brings the belt right back here to Houston.
And he would be one of the youngest champions since John Jones was a champion. I mean, this would be, if he does pull this off, I don't think we can really diminish how significant this is, especially against an all-time great
No.
like Pantoja. I mean, I think Pantoja is probably the second best flyweight of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's only because DJ was in the division. I mean, DJ is arguably, and I guess you could put Henry Cejudo in that conversation as well, but Henry did go spend some time at 35. So bottom line, Pantoja's top 3 flyweights of all time. I don't think anybody would argue that. And, you know, for somebody to come in as young as Joshua Van is, only 5 years into the sport, and pull off something like that, we could see what is, you know, becoming one of the next great champions in the UFC.
Well, and hopefully Josh Van, if he decides he wants to stay in for another decade, he'd only be 33. So he's the kind of guy that gets in young enough. If he could be a dominant champion at 25 and he didn't move to 35, now you're talking about somebody who amount of fights left on their contract and in their life, he could reach the Mighty Mouse level of defenses. Now, I'm not going to get ahead of myself and say he can get 12 and 13 title defenses. Especially in today's era, I think people win about 3 or 4 and then they look to go up. So who knows what'll happen. But either way, I think this is a great opportunity for Josh Van to put not only Houston, but his home country, and I don't know the name of it, but he's from a small town, small country in Asia, and he's coming over here. I think it's going to be an interesting fight.
Yeah, apologies, I don't remember the name offhand either.
Yeah.
I was watching it in the countdown, but I can't recall. So somebody comment. Let
Drop
us know.
it in the comments.
We say he's from Houston because we live in Houston.
That's right.
So you know, and I don't care what happens in this fight. I want to see Van versus Brandon Moreno next.
Ooh, yeah.
So I know Moreno's fighting on the same card, but when you talk about like stylistic matchups, like put a little man's BMF on that one. You know, like, I mean,
seriously.
there is no way that Moreno versus Van wouldn't be exciting. So hopefully whatever shakes out at 323, but I would love to see that fight. And I quite honestly hope I'm wrong in my prediction. Not that I don't like Pantoja, but like if he wins and Moreno wins, are we going to get Moreno versus Pantoja 47?
I can't have that happen.
I just don't want to see that. Speaking in the same vein of fights that don't really make sense to me, I want to talk about one more on this card. It's Peyton Talbott versus Henry Cejudo.
Oh, yeah. Now, that's one we've all been waiting for.
Why is Henry Cejudo fighting Peyton Talbott for his retirement fight? And what does he seek to gain out of this? Because when I'm looking to make a prediction, I want to know what you've got to lose. What's at stake? You know, Henry's already one of the greatest mixed martial artists. You know, when you factor in the Olympic gold medal,
Combat sports athlete.
best combat sports athletes of all time.
Yeah.
If he wins against Peyton Talbott, it doesn't change a thing for his legacy.
Right.
If he loses, it doesn't change a thing for his legacy. He's old, you know. So what's the point for Cejudo? And that is why I'm leaning towards Talbot, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I have the same concerns. It feels like a going out of business sale that the team Cejudo was doing. They're like, yeah, you know, we're selling heavy bags and we're all getting out of the business. We don't really have anything to do with MMA anymore after this, and that just worries me. You know, if you're not all the way in, and you have one foot out the door, you might as well just go all the way. We hear Dana say that all the time. He doesn't want anybody fighting that's not 100% ready. Peyton Talbott is still a young, hungry guy. And Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot, super interesting. I want to see who ends up on top and who ends up on bottom. And for all intents and purposes, Cejudo should be able to implement some of his grappling, but Peyton Talbot is a longer guy. I mean, the stats say that Cejudo is 5'3" and Peyton Talbot is a towering 5'8", I think. So, obviously, the 5-inch reach advantage is going to play into the range, in his ability to maintain his range. If he can keep this fight at kickboxing range, Cejudo's going to have a real hard time, especially if you go watch some of the training footage that he's been putting out recently. Cejudo, I can't really critique much of what he does, especially when it comes to the grappling. And he's so experienced. He knows what he's doing. But I see his chin and his head a little bit tall right now. At 5'3", it's still pretty tall the way he stands up. And it feels to me like instead of slipping down towards punches, at times he pulls his head away from punches. A guy like Peyton Talbot can pick up on that and send a couple long strikes, a couple long punches your way to get you to bend back. And then once you've bent back once or twice, there's nowhere else for you to go unless your feet go back with you. a head kick or something like that can come up out of where you think you're out of range, and then a guy like Peyton Talbott, who's very good and has a lot of power, can shut the lights out on you. So I'm worried that Cejudo will try to get this fight to the ground, but he may telegraph his shots a little bit too much. He may stay a little bit too comfortable on the feet. You know, we've seen Cejudo adapt to a pretty karate style as far as striking goes. And it works for him sometimes. He's really good with blitzing inside, and he'll throw a few hands in, and that ultimately gets him inside where he can start to grapple and stuff. But Peyton Talbott, again, he's got a reach advantage. He's going to be a lot taller. So Cejudo's going to have to cover more ground from the kickboxing range if he wants those blitzes to work. And he just doesn't really have that Topuria style boxing where you can bob and weave your way inside into range, into boxing range, and then start to exploit a guy like Peyton Talbott, who's a longer fighter. It's just a tough road for Cejudo to get inside, and in 15 minutes, Peyton Talbott knows how to control the fight. So this one's tough, but I do have to go with Peyton Talbott, and I think he's going to get this one done. I'm going to go decision again. I hate to say it, but I think we see another decision. Peyton Talbott gets his hand raised 30-27.
Yeah, I think Henry Cejudo is done before the fight starts.
Yeah.
I think that I mean, when your coaches are talking about retirement, you know, it's a tough proposition, especially when you're up against somebody who's got something to prove. And we talk about this all the time. Anytime you can get in the cage with a former champion and put that on your resume, that's something that's not, you should really not take that for granted, because there's not a whole lot of former champions that float around.
I'll take it one even higher. He's one of the only double champs floating around.
He might be the only. I mean, Amanda Nunes is coming back, but is there any other double champ? Yeah, that's right. Alexandre Pereira is floating around. Topuria is floating around, but they're current belt holders, right? So they're not fighting up and comers.
True.
So it's very uncommon if you're an up and comer to get a chance to be inside of the cage with a double former champion.
Yeah.
And I think Peyton Talbott has corrected some of the things in his game. He's maturing a little bit as a fighter. He's a very good striker. I do like him by finish. I think he knocks Henry Cejudo out in the second round.
Dude, I could see it. I mean, obviously, if he can keep this fight at kickboxing range, Cejudo is going to be in a lot of trouble. And yeah, his kicks seem super good. Obviously, he moves really well.
That high chin that you talked about, I think that's going to be Peyton Talbott's really good with kicks. He's really good with really good with hooks, really good with knees, everything up the middle. He's very, very skilled with finding that power shot on your chin. And when you're bouncing around with your chin high and your hands low, man, that's a tough place to be with Peyton Talbott in the cage. I don't care how experienced you are.
Yeah, I'm almost visualizing a Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman style knockout where Cejudo isn't slipping down to the side totally, but what I see him doing right now is sort of pulling back, and that head kick can find its way to your head, whether you slip down towards it or you pull yourself back, especially against a taller guy.
For sure. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it. Guys, enjoy the fights. Thanks so much for watching this episode. Let us know who you're taking for UFC 323, and give us a comment. Let us know what you think the best fight on the card is going to be. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, boys.